You know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to Punklottopod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I am your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we assign our guests a year, and they choose one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year for us to talk about. Today, we're joined by Matty Grace of the bands Cluttered, Future Girls, and as well as her solo music. Cluttered just put out a collection of their first two EPs called The First Pandemic, which is a really fun collection of tunes. Future Girls also just released an EP called Year Long Winter. That actually came out a week ago as we were recording this. And Matty has released a solo record called I Was a Fat Stupid. And it's a really fun little idea for a record that Matty talks about on the show. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about the year 2010. Have we decided how we say that? I think I've been saying 2010 for 10 plus years, so that's what I'm going with. And the record is RVIVR's self-titled debut LP.
Yeah, an important milestone album from that year.
One of multiple touchstone records from that year. There are some pretty pivotal records that we get into on the episode. But yeah, something you kind of said towards the end that wraps it up is that like everyone agreed that it was great. And I was thinking about that, like, I don't remember anyone saying it was bad when it came out.
Yeah.
People didn't like them as people because they were the subject of their criticism, but
yeah,
which we get into that as well. But
and yeah, if you wanna hear more from us, you can head over to our Patreon. This week, we haven't even decided what we're doing yet. What are we doing?
We don't know yet. We'll find out.
We haven't done it yet, so we'll see. But you'll be able to hear that over on patreon.com/punklottopod. For $1, you get access to all of our bonus audio. It's probably an I'm listening or a chart dive or something along those lines, but we'll decide after we end this call. And then we are on all forms of social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at punklottopod. We have an email address, it's punklottopod@gmail.com, a voicemail line, which is 202-688-PUNK, and a Substack, which is punklottopod.substack.com. I think that's everything, and enjoy the show.
Another
we are joined by Matty Grace of the band Cluttered, and as well as the band Future Girls, and solo projects, and lots of stuff. So, Matty, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, I guess we'll start at the beginning of our kind of like conversation. We featured the band Talk Show Host on earlier this year, probably like the first real episode of the year. And you reached out to us like right after they were on, and I was like, "Oh, great! This is how I want the show to go. I want to have guests on, and then other people just come and ask to be on the show, and I don't have to go ask people."
Well, it's so in my wheelhouse to be like, oh, I can just nerd out about like a record for a while. Like it was just like, and the Talk Show Host podcast was great, and coincidentally, that episode and your podcast is the reason why Cluttered and Talk Show Host have done a split. Like the fallout of like the sequence of events after that episode are why we have a split coming out on May 13th.
That
really
and I
cool.
saw that last night, like doing my little bit of like research on the bands. I was like, "Oh shit, there's an Enemy U covers EP coming out." We talked about that band on that episode. So, how did that come about?
I've been a huge Enemy U fan since like 2006, 2005, like when the band was first introduced to me. And I was listening to the Short Music for Short People pod that you did with Chris and Fab. And I was just like, I made some obnoxious tweet that was like, D4 and Enemy U are the best bands on that comp. Listen to more Enemy U. And so it was just like me just being kind of like Twitter obnoxious. And we got to talking, and it was just like, oh, we both like Chris and Fab and I all really like that band, and like kind of got to introduce it to some of the other members of our bands, which was pretty sweet. And it started off like Chris sent me a text that was like, are y'all playing Pooza? And I was like, yeah. Are you playing Pooza? Yeah. I was like, and then I was like, do you want to cover Enemy U and let me sing? And they were like, oh, that would be really cool. We should record that. And then it was like, well, what if Cluttered records an Enemy U song and then Chris sings? And I was like, that would be sweet. What if we do 4 songs? So we'll each pick 2 and then do that. So the whole split, it's called Enemy Us. It comes out May 13th. Or by the time this airs, it'll have been out for a couple of days. And it's 4 songs. It's pretty cohesive, like considering it's 2 separate bands playing with singers switched, but like Sean and Becca, like Sean drums and does backups and Talk Show Host, and Becca plays bass and does backups and Cluttered. Sean and Becca do harmonies on all the songs, and so like there's this uniformity to it that's really cool. And it was just a nice way to pay like homage to a band that maybe not a lot of people know or listen to or like appreciate, or maybe fell under their radar a little bit. And it's just like I'm big on punk history, and like knowing where things come from, and knowing like the influences behind whatever. And so being able to like create this thing, like we conceptualized it in February, recorded it in March, mixed it and mastered it in April, and it comes out in May. So we were just like, I'm not one to like really sit on things anyway, if I can help it. So it was very much like, let's get this done, let's do it, let's have something out for Pooza, because the way that Cluttered and Talk Show Host became friends was they released Mid-Century Modern, their last record, the same day that we released our second EP. And somehow we crossed paths on Twitter, and then just like became friends from that, and played some shows together in November, and like just hit it off like as people. We were like, oh, we all get along, this is like fun. Like we just enjoy being around each other, so we should do a split. And then me kind of just like poking at it, being like, let's do this, like over and over again. So now it exists, and it premiered on Punk News today, which was cool, which would be Thursday, May 12th. But it'll be out by the time the podcast comes out, and people can find it on any streaming service or like on our Bandcamps. And, then you can find like the original material that we've done. So
That's wild. I think that's literally the first time anything like that has happened, like with our connection. Like there's just a funny, like, I don't think, Dylan, has anything else ever happened like that? As far as we got included in some liner notes one time, but that's really the extent of it. So
yeah,
that is so awesome that like just that little conversation spark spun out. That's great. That's so cool.
Yeah, it was literally just like, this podcast is rad. You're talking about everything. Oh, we both like the same band. We both like the same obscure band. Let's do something with it. It's not like we decided to cover like Dillinger 4 or something, where it would be really
Yeah.
like really challenging to try and do a like, you know, to do that justice. Like
Right.
you know, maybe someday, but like I
Yeah,
hold
D4
that band in like
have
really
some
high
pretty-
esteem.
Yeah, and
But no,
everyone
this
has
is,
opinions on them. Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. And it's just like, so we picked the band and we had fun doing it, and stuff sounds dope, and we're gonna try to do some of the songs at Poozza Fest, and maybe if we get to tour again together, potentially in the fall or maybe next year, we'll try and like throw that into one of the sets where like I do a song or Chris does a song
Yeah.
with us, and we do it that way, because like it's kind of fun, because you're just like, oh, my friend is here, my friend can sing the song with us. Like
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
Yeah, that's always and like as someone who just goes to shows regularly, like that's always really fun whenever like the artist that another band has covered is on the same tour, and then you're like, I think we actually saw like Off With Their Heads one time, and they were touring with The Arrival, and Patty
Nice.
from D4 is in there, and Off With Their Heads had just done those Cleveland Bound Death Sentence covers on like a picture disc, I think,
Yeah.
and I remember
They got Patty to sing them.
well, so the funny thing
tried.
is, like, we tried. We were trying to get them to like do it, and they were like, "Yeah, let's do one of those songs. Let's do Drain or whatever it was." And then like, "Where's Patty?" And then so basically everybody in the venue was looking for Patty, and they think he was like outside. He's like, he's probably outside talking about some Japanese hardcore band with somebody, and no one was able to get Patty in time for them to play the song, but we tried. We almost had it.
That's sweet. I once saw Vacation play in New York, and Shellshag was there, and Vacation covered Crashing Rockets by Shellshag, and they just all sang it together, and it was so good.
Those are like just these fun little like music nerd moments.
They're like punk rock Easter eggs.
Yeah. Well, Cluttered is. Would you describe the band as being located in Halifax ultimately?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're located in Halifax. We're a queer, like, melodic punk band, punk pop band. I don't know, genres are hard.
Yeah.
But like, you know, it's kind of a throwback to like all of the things that influenced us, and like, you know, like kind of hard on sleeve lyrics for the most part, and like trying to, and then just like loud guitars and really powerful drums and cool harmonies and stuff. And it's just like, it's the band I've always wanted to do. I've been in bands for a long time, and I've been in a bunch of different projects, and to get like Cluttered formed in a really kind of a special way. Like during one of the lockdowns, there was this group in Montreal that was raising money for a group called Solidarity Across Borders, and they organized a thing called Demo Fest. And I was just like, yeah, I want to contribute to Demo Fest. Like that's right. Like it was run by some friends. It's super DIY. It's what I wanted to do. And so Cluttered kind of formed out of that. Like we had never really intended on it being a real band. And then we got a little bit of traction in the way that like our drummer tweeted at Laura Jane Grace, and she listened to the band and was like, this is rad. So we were like, oh, we should make a second EP. And then like we made a second EP, and people seemed to really like it. So we compiled the two of them together and got a vinyl pressed, and like went on tour and started playing shows. And now we're just like working on 2 records concurrently, and like just we're a busy band now.
Yeah, I mean, like if Laura Jane Grace kind of gives your band the seal of approval, then you should probably run with it.
Well, and it's also just like, I mean, I'm a huge Against Me fan. I'm like, I use she, they pronouns. I'm a non-binary trans woman. So like Laura's impact on my life has been like pretty unmeasurable. Like, just like, oh, you know, you opened a door for more people to recognize that, you know, folks like us exist, and like there's like an avenue to like to have that voice heard, especially in punk rock, because like for so many years punk was like, you know, there's always been women in punk and there's always been marginalized voices in punk, but like for the most part it's kind of like a boys club with like, you know, rad bands kind of splattered throughout it. Mm-hmm. And so like to be a band with like 2 queer people in the band, and like that's kind of a focus that we try and draw attention to, which kind of ties into why I picked the record we picked today. Because, like, queer voices trying to say something important, and it's just something we're just trying to build on and have fun with and play some rad shows and, you know, get a record out and hopefully people like it. The new record we're working on is demoed and we're in the process of finalizing the recordings for it. And it's a little darker, which I'm like really excited about. Like, just like the songs are pretty dark anyway. Like, you know, there's a lot of the Cluttered songs that are just like, oh, this is about dying. Like, point blank, that's what this song is about.
But it's so catchy.
It's so catchy. That's what I want. Don't hold your breath. Like, that's, you know, it's a fine line, right? Like, you want to make catchy, hooky songs with like cool melodies and then just like say something where you're just like, you know, like, I'm a person that lives with mental illness, as a lot of us do, and it's just like, this is how I process, this is how I get things out, these are the words that I write. And then even sometimes I'll just write something and then be like, I'll look back on it after the fact and like, whoa, I was super unwell when I wrote that. But like, it stands, it holds water and is like sick. It's still sick.
Yeah, it is funny. Like, I definitely, if you've ever like written anything in the past and then revisited it, you'll probably know this too, where you're just like, oh wow, I don't even remember like writing that. Like, I remember the act of writing it, but I don't remember like the feelings or emotions going into that writing at all.
I had that with relearning some of these new Cluttered songs. I was like, I can hear like how mentally ill I was based on the chord progressions I used. I was like, that's weird. That's a weird one. Why did I do that? And I was like, oh, I was sick. Like,
it's funny. I didn't even think about too, like, just writing music wise too. You could just be like, well, I'm going to throw this in here just because this is how I feel in the moment. But
yeah. It's like assembling a puzzle a little bit. You're just like, these pieces surprisingly fit. Doesn't make sense, but these two puzzle pieces, for whatever reason, work together, and then you get a song out of it.
So the two EPs were collected as is on vinyl. The First Pandemic.
Yeah, it's on vinyl. It's called The First Pandemic. We're shipping those out. Like, now we have copies of them. It was done through a label in Halifax, so it's called Broken Frames Music, but there's like no social media or anything. It's so you just kind of get it through us. It's just like a friend like helping us out. But I'm really like, it's one EP on each side. It's like, I'm really proud of it. It's my first time in like 10-ish years having songs that I wrote and sang on committed to vinyl. So like, that's like a pretty big commitment and feels pretty good. So
yeah, like, I've never been in a band that ever had vinyl. Like, we had a cassette, and even that made me feel really special whenever we did it, you know.
I love tapes. Like, tapes, we've made tapes of the first two EPs. I will stand by, like, tapes are my favorite piece of merch. They're so easy to make. Like, in Canada especially, there's like a really good place to get them created. So it's just like, oh, like, why wouldn't you have a tape?
Yeah.
Like, especially, you know. It's also weird, CDs are coming back.
Yeah.
We had The First Pandemic collected as a bunch of songs on a CD that Bloated Cat put out. And it's just like, people are like, yeah, I'll buy a CD. And I was like, do you have anything to listen to this with? Like, laptops don't have CD drives. Cars barely have CD players. Like, but I'm not going to complain. If you have the means, like, let's go.
Yeah.
I imagine that they have like home stereos with like old, like, people are like buying like 90s stereo systems with like CD changers in it, and it's like it's like a vinyl thing, almost. But
somebody's like, I got a 20 disc changer.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, do you know how badly those things just like get stuck? Just like the CD goes around the thing and then it gets stuck, and then you're like, yeah, you didn't deal with this in like 1996 like the rest of us did.
Yeah, like somebody now is like, oh, look at this 20 disc CD changer, but I had to put it in the trunk to get
in the trunk of my car. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that CD has come back, because to me, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm too old, but like, I have little to no nostalgia for CDs, really.
I mean, I definitely like it was like tapes and CDs were the first format I was ever really exposed to with music, because like my folks didn't have a record player. Vinyl kind of was on the way out when I was like becoming conscious about music and stuff. So like CDs and tapes, I definitely have a nostalgia for, but like I never took care of my CDs.
Yeah.
I was never like, it was just like I would have stacks of them, but I would like, you know, and I would organize them, but like, you know, the cases get broken or stuff like gets like chipped or scratched or whatever, and it just never really seemed like the most viable medium at the time. But right now with like pressing plant turnaround times and how long things take and like just the general way of the world, and people will say supply chain, but like how much of that is supply chain and how much of that is like corporate greed, who knows. But like CDs are a viable option again because it gives folks a way to support the artist while also having the music, while also being able to be like, the art's cool, like you get to see the art in a different format. So it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, you mentioned that corporate greed, because it's like we were already like facing, a lot of labels are facing issues of like plants taking forever, just thanks to like the major labels having to spend so much time or taking up so much of the space in the plants for like record store day type stuff. And then like Amazon and Walmart and Target all get involved in saying, we all have now our own exclusive colors too. And it's like, okay, it's time for one of these companies to invest. Like we need some new plants or something.
It's new plants. I mean, like in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, record labels owned their own pressing plants, and then they sold them all off. And then instead of being like, oh, this is a boom, we should reinvest in this, they're just using the same like 4 plants that have been left in commission. And so it's just like, and I think there's like a lot of gatekeeping in that. Like obviously not from, like if you have enough money in the world, you can like do anything you want. But like if like for smaller manufacturers and stuff, I imagine there's a lot of gatekeeping with like, I want to start a record pressing plant, and like not having the means to like know how to get the equipment or know how to use it, or like, you know, it's a knowledge transfer, right? Like you need somebody who knows what they're doing already to teach you how to do it. And then like if those people aren't around, then you're stuck with the dilemma that we're in right now. And like record store day, for every cool release where there's like a band that you know, they reissue something you never expected, or there's like a cool box set or something, you know, there's like 80,000 versions of like Fleetwood Mac's Rumors, and you're like, do you really need to press that record again?
Yeah, it's, you know, record store day used to be really fun. Like, yeah, it definitely was a lot of stuff where I was like pumped to wait in that line for, and then like just year after year it was like, cool, you're just reissuing Led Zeppelin? I mean, there's plenty of those in literally every record store in the country. Like, yeah, I
haven't participated in it in years.
Same.
And the last thing I got after the fact, and it was a box set of the first 5 Goo Goo Dolls records, because the Goo Goo Dolls used to rule. Yeah. I stand by this. This is a hill I will die on. Prior to like 1998, the Goo Goo Dolls were a sick band, and I got a box set of like all of the good records, and I was just like, this is sweet. This is like what record store day is about. And it's just like, yeah, I bought it months after the fact. I bought it not waiting in line. I found it by like sheer luck. Like the days of me going and waiting for the record store to open while people like try to climb over each other is just like,
yeah,
it's done. I'm never doing that again.
No,
I think really the last record store day I remember participating in was several years ago, like probably like 8 or 9 years ago. Like when it was still considered fun. And like I remember just showing up well after they had opened, waiting in like a 5-minute line, walking in, room is slammed full of people that are just like elbow to elbow looking at the shelves, and I'm just like, where are the peas? Where are the peas? Where are the peas? Eyeball box set, yoink.
Yeah,
and then
I have a really
one other thing.
I have a really vivid memory of like when Warner Brothers reissued. They were doing this split series where it would be like the original song and then a cover version of the song, and it was like Husker Du's "Don't Want to Know If You're Lonely," and Green Day did the B-side, and I was like, yeah, I want to hear this because like it's a great Green Day cover and it's a great Husker Du song, and I forgot that it was on a major, so like I remember being like really stoked on that, and then just being like, everything else was picked over, and then like there was just a stack of those records, and I was like, oh yeah, I like the thing that nobody else likes. Like, of course that's how this works.
I think the same day I got the I want to say that came out for Record Store Day. The Coliseum Super Chunk 7-inch
Yeah.
Misfits cover.
Yeah.
Split.
Yeah.
That was a fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely evolved past. I mean, it's good for the stores, I guess, because, you know, they bring in more money on that day than usually any other day of the year. So, like, I'm not going to begrudge them from taking part, but man.
Well, here's the flip side of that, though, is like, if you love music that much, if you love music enough to be like, I'm going to Record Store Day, I'm participating in Record Store Day, why don't you go like weekly to a record store and pick something up? Why don't you like actively support local record stores? Like, I understand that it is like there's a reason why people contribute to that and like are taking part. But like, if you have a rad local record store, like Halifax has a great one called Obsolete Records. There's one in Ottawa where I've been staying for a minute called Vertigo Records. Like, Vertigo doesn't participate in Record Store Day. They were like, no way, we're not doing this. Like, we do not have your copy of the Taylor Swift 7-inch. Like, you can go somewhere else to try to find that. But like, we're just a record store. Like, come support us. And it's great. Like, when I first got to Ottawa for this visit thing that I'm doing, I walk in and I found a Soviets record that I was looking for like 8 years.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, it's $13. Like, this is a perfect record store. And every time you go in, you find something new like that. And it's just like, that's why I love music. That's why I love punk. Like, being able to just like have a list in your head of the things that you're constantly looking for. And then you can try and find them. And then like, there's kind of that thrill of the hunt instead of like being like, I'm going to go on Discogs and pay $80 for shipping for this record. Like, you know, sometimes you have to.
Yeah.
But other times it's just like, well, what if I just am patient and wait? And then sometimes it turns up and it's like the best feeling in the world.
I'm so glad you mentioned the Soviets. I love that band so much. So
yeah, they're great. The fact that Dead Broke and Rad Girlfriend are reissuing the first two Soviets records, that's so good.
I'm definitely. I have a copy of the first one already. So I'm hoping I know they just put up pre-orders for that one. So I'm hoping they do the pre-orders for the second one soon because I don't have that one. That seems like the harder one to find.
It was the harder one to find, and then the Rarities LP is also like kind of hard to find. But I was looking for the third one. I was looking for the one that was on Fat. So I was like, oh, I came across this, and like, who knows if that'll ever get reissued? Yeah. So it was just like pretty sweet to find.
You'd hope. I mean, Fat Wreck seems kind of cool to deal with, right? Like, they don't seem like major corporate.
They reissue things that are like really like records that I think are important. They know are important to people. Like, they'll keep, Cuban Ballerina by Dead to Me in print, and they, when all of the stuff with No Idea Records happened, like, they've been keeping reinventing Axl Rose in print, and so like, they do good shit. Yeah. So like, just keep like that stretch of records from the 2000s, like keep all the Lawrence Arms stuff, keep Banner Pilot, keep Dead to Me, keep Against Me, keep all of those bands just in print, and then like new generations of people will find them and be like, oh, this resonates with me. This is like the best.
Dylan and I have talked before about how like there doesn't seem to be like a new wave of that style punk currently. Like, I think we're in a lull period.
That's where Cluttered wants to fill that void. I wanna like harken back to that stuff because like it was really important to me. Like, being vulnerable and emotionally honest and like wearing your heart on your sleeve while also still being a punk band and still having DIY ethics and still like supporting the right things is like, that shit's invaluable. Like, it'll like the values that you can learn even just from like listening to lyrics, like that stuff's super important and is like really helpful.
I was going to say that earlier too when you were talking about the band. Like, Clutter does remind me of that sound, so I'm very happy that your band exists doing that.
Thank you.
I would want to mention the other two things that you've got that just fairly recently came out. So you have a solo EP cassette that just came out.
Yeah. That one is I've been doing solo material for a couple years. A lot of it is acoustic based, but this EP is called I Was a Fat Stupid. I had a garagey punk band in the 2010s called Fat Stupids. We had a 7-inch out on Rad Girlfriend and No Breaks Records. And like a CD that came out on Waterslide, and we just mostly played around Halifax in Atlantic Canada. It was very much at that time when like Marksmen were a big band, Steve Atomic Band kind of like blew up a little bit, like all the Ottawa stuff was happening, and at the same time there was like cool bands happening in Europe and all that. So like Fat Stupids was really important to me, and everyone was doing these like Instagram posts, like the 10-year nostalgia challenge. And just like as a queer person, I was just like, this bums me out. Like, I do not want to reflect on myself. 10 years ago, I was like in a total mess of dysphoria and drinking all the time, and just like, it just sucked. And I was like, well, how can I like flip this and make it like kind of a positive thing? And I was like, I haven't tried to write like a super, like a garagey poppy song in 6 or 7 years. Like since Fat Stupids, we did a reunion EP. The only reason we ever broke up was because our drummer moved away. And he came home for Christmas one year, and we were like, let's record some songs that we never finished. So we did that, and that was probably the last time I had tried to write anything in that vein. So I wrote 6 songs, or 5 songs, and found a YouTube video of an old Fat Stupid song that we never recorded. So that was the 6th song. I recorded those 6 songs over 2 days, got it mixed a week later. I sent it to Core, who runs Tarantula Tapes with his partner Casey, which is a tape label based in Barrie, Ontario. And they were just like, this is dope. And like Corey's old band played with Fat Stupid, so like I knew he might be into it. And so they were like, can we put this tape out? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And they're like, it might not be till May. And I was like, can I put it online earlier than that? Because like, you know, to be like, hey, do you remember in January when people were doing nostalgia posts? Like it's kind of like, it's a little bit like retroactive, but like getting to kind of strike while the iron is hot and people are still doing that and stuff. It was really good. And the tape's been like pretty well received. The other one that you're alluding to also came out on Tarantula Tapes and on Dirt Cult, the new Future Girls EP.
Yeah.
Post Fat Stupids, I had a band called Future Girls. We did an album on Dirt Cult Records called Motivation Problems. And that was kind of like my main songwriting vehicle for many, many years prior to like starting to do solo stuff. And that band slowed down a little bit. Our drummer plays in a really rad band called Botfly from Canada, who are very busy. And so like that band had just slowed down a little bit. But then pandemic hit and everything came to a stop. And Dwayne, the drummer in Future Girls, and I were talking about how rad Skeleton Coast, the Lawrence Arms record, was. And he was like, what if we like did another Future Girls thing? And I was like, I'm down. So I found an old demo, which is the song Year Long Winter, which is where the album title came from. And I wrote 4 other songs in a couple days, and we got together and felt it out and kind of had a little bit of a lineup shift. So it was originally going to be the original lineup of Future Girls, like, because we had some member changes. And the original bass player was just like, I'm not really doing music right now. And we respected that. So we got Becca, who plays in Cluttered, because Becca's like my partner in crime. So it was just like, hey, Becca, do you want to get in on this? And like, you know, lend your voice and lend your bass playing and like do that thing. So we did this 5-song EP that was like predominantly recorded by me. We did the drums at a studio with friends of ours. And then it was mixed by Justin Yates, who I'm in another band called Weekend Dads. Okay. And Justin did like the last 2 EPs that we did or something, or like has worked with us before, and is just like an incredible engineer, mixer, sound person, human being. So it was just like, let's do that. And so that EP came out, and it was supposed to come out last year, and we ran into like a little bit of a roadblock, and so we just put a pause on it. And then when things were coming up for the solo EP, Core from Tarantula Tapes was like, hey, do you think we could get the Future Girls album like done and out? Like, do you think we could just do that? And I was like, let me see what I can do. And we ended up pulling it all together and putting it out, and folks seem to really like it. And that's really cool, because like we were a band that played like predominantly DIY spaces, you know, maintained a big like, this is what we want to do. We're not really trying to contribute to like an industry. We're just a band. And we would play this festival in Ottawa every year called Ottawa Explosion, which was a great punk festival. And we made like a lot of friends, and like a lot of people really appreciated what we were doing. And so like all these years later to have this new thing come out, it's really, really validating and really, really nice, because like at the end of the day, we're all just like friends. Like we just get along, and like maybe we'll play another show again someday, or maybe we'll record something else. But for like the time being, this is like what it is.
It's funny. So last week, I think the as we're recording this, the EP went up on Bandcamp, right? Last week.
Yeah, May 6th.
Yeah, and so our friend Dave Brown, he hosts a podcast called One Band 5 Songs. He messaged me and another friend. Yeah. He's like, "You should check out this Future Girls EP. It's really good. I love it. It's so good." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. I'll check it out." And I went and like looked at like the liner notes or the little like description that was on the Bandcamp, and I was like, "Huh, that's funny. Members of Cluttered. Oh, okay, that's kind of neat." And I told him, I was like, "Well, we're gonna be talking to someone from that band this week on the show." So I thought it was a really funny little coincidence.
Yeah, it's also cool with Cluttered having like people like kind of paying attention to Cluttered to like draw attention to like other things I've done. And like it's just because like I'm in like a bunch of projects that are all like kind of like punk and punk adjacent. Like I'm just very busy, and so being able to like you know, Dirt Cult is lovely. I will work with Chris as many times as Chris wants to work with me. Like, so to have Dirt Cult on board, because Dirt Cult did the first Future Girls record, and then doing this new EP and putting it out digitally and distributing it and stuff, and like people have been like really stoked on it. Like your pal that you had mentioned was just like, "This is the best thing I've heard all year," and I was just like, "Whoa!" And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, the title track of that album I wrote in like an apartment after a really hard breakup, and was just like everything was so bleak and so dark, and I was like, I hung on to that song for like 4 years. I was like, we have to do something with this someday, and then it became the title track of the album. So. Yeah,
well, too, and like, and even the timing of that, like that title coming out now, the timing is just perfect. Just, you know, it makes it seem like it's more in the moment than it is, but which gives it a little bit of a timeless quality, knowing that it is an older song.
Yeah, totally. It's cool when stuff that you write a while ago is still like applicable. Like things change and things are hard like everywhere, but like they are just always hard.
Yeah.
Like they don't get easier.
Yeah.
So it's just like, oh, this is a universal feeling. Like people can attach themselves to this. Like, oh, things do feel like it's winter year long. Yeah. Like it does always feel cold and like harsh and kind of shitty. And like, yeah, I'm really stoked on those two releases. I think the Future Girls one is like really strong, and I'm really happy that folks are enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've got so many great projects coming out right now. We talked a little bit about this before we started recording, but Clutter's got some fun stuff coming up the week of this recording, or the week of this episode going up. So go ahead and plug those now.
For sure. We're opening for Propagandhi in Halifax at the Marquee Ballroom, which is great. I'm elated that we get to do that. And then we're going to Pouzza Fest in Montreal. We might be doing some of the Enemy Us stuff that is on the split. We're going to try and arrange how we're going to do that a little bit, and that'll be really cool because that will be kind of like the debut of that. And like we put out this split, we probably like we're only going to be playing the Enemy U covers or like the Enemy Us stuff when we're all in the same place. Like that's the only way that it's ever going to work. So like Pouzza seemed like an opportune time to do that. So we have that coming up, and then we've got some more touring coming up in the summer.
Awesome. So if you're going to Pouzza this weekend, go check out Cluttered, and talk show host too.
Sunday night. Yeah, talk show host plays Friday. Cluttered is playing Sunday with the Raging Nathans. It'll be dope.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, cool. Let's get into the rest of the show then. So, the premise of the show is we assign our guests a year, and they choose one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk adjacent album from that year for us to talk about. So I gave you the year 2010, and before we get into the album you selected for us, what are some other records that came out that year that you considered choosing?
There's like 4 or 5 of them. The easy one, the layup, was White Crosses by Against Me, came out in 2010. That record sonically is like incredible, and like is the last record before Laura came out, and so like you know, there's really cool material on it, and it's kind of a bit of an underappreciated Against Me record, I think. Like, I don't think that is held in as much esteem as, like, you know, an Axl Rose or Transgender Dysphoria Blues or even a New Wave. So that was one. Chamberlain Waits by the Menzingers, that was a hugely influential record for me when it came out. There are some songs that they will probably never play live again, and you're like, oh, I would love to see, you know, Who's Your Partner, or like So It Goes, or a song like that live. Like, it would be for, like, it might be at Fest or something. Like, it's like for nerds like me. There was the First Forgetters 7-inch, which was Blake from Jawbreaker's project. That 7-inch is like 4 songs and it's perfect. Like Vampire Lessons and The Night Accelerates, like those are really, really good songs and really strong songwriting. And the other big one was Iron Sheik's first record.
Yeah.
That also came out in 2010. And like, those were all huge records for me, and like were the soundtrack to that year for me, pretty much. Like, and were for several years later. Like, I still go back to all of those records. Can I unveil which one I picked? Or do you want to do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the one that I actually picked was RVIVR's self-titled debut album. Ties into Iron Sheik, because Latterman split off essentially into, you know, Bridge and Tunnel and Iron Sheik and RVIVR was kind of those 3 bands. And that RVIVR record is like really special to me, like very important from the way that it like is track listed, from the lyrical content, from the folks involved in the band, from the things that they stood for. Like, it's still pretty perfect. Like, they have a pretty great catalog, and it's all stuff that is just like so like means so much to me that it felt like kind of a disservice not to pick that record to talk about.
Yeah 2010 was when I sent it to you, I was like, this was a good year, because like for some reason we've talked before that people don't want to really select anything from the 2010s in general. I think because it's just so recent, and people are like, I was paying attention then. I don't want to talk about that stuff. But looking at the year 2010 itself, we were like, this year was stacked from like top to bottom. Just incredible records. It
was also 12 years ago.
I mean, yeah, it's true. It's not that.
I was
like
I was thinking like
kind
I've
of a
moved
trip.
like 6 times since then. So
yeah,
like city to city, or like different apartments, because one of those I can relate to and the other one is very different.
Well, okay. I mean, not counting moving in and out of college dorm rooms between 2010 and 2012, but let's see. 2 different apartments in 2012. No, 3 apartments in 2012. But then a city, and another city. So yeah. Quite a few times.
Yeah, it's a significant period of time that passed by very quickly. Like, if I think about it too hard, I'm just like, wow, 2010, like, I can't, like, I'm just like a completely different person. Like, that's just what that is. But like, being able to reflect on things that came out and like records and nostalgia and stuff is like super important. I mean, nostalgia I have a complicated relationship with, but like, you know, there's something that feels good to like take you back to like a more innocent time and place, I guess, before you're like bogged down with as many of the atrocities of the world that are ongoing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Let's see, 2010, I probably would have been, well, let's see, that's 12 years ago. So I would have been like 22, 20, 23. So yeah, I guess it's like, yeah, right there actually becoming an adult. You know, technically, legally, you're an adult at 18, but mentally, you're not an adult.
You're still a baby at 18.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know anything.
Yeah, 2010, I was 20. So.
Yeah.
The one, this is the one thing that I do remember is feeling old then, which is so strange to be like, I was 20 years old and I felt old. How old do I feel now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, every day is another day closer to death, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, the last, 2 years alone have, I feel like they've aged every human being on this planet in a way that we've not.
Oh, yeah. It just reiterates that time isn't real.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, this thing happened last year. And you're like, you mean in the void? Like, the ongoing void that's happening?
Yeah. And honestly, if you look at just like the grander scheme of things, it's like, nah, things were always terrible. We just had this weird lull where things were like not as horrible as they could be.
Not as well publicized.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you just had to like do a tiny bit of digging and you'd be like, there's war crimes everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Things are on fire everywhere. Like, and now it's just like, oh no, we know that things are bad and people are actively removing rights from people and actively like making huge efforts to just like dismantle systems that are like trying to give like, generally poor and marginalized voices like some sort of level platform, even though it'll never be equal. There's just people trying to dismantle that like really actively now. Like in 2010, it was a little more sinister. It was just like, we'll pass these bills and we'll make it really challenging for people to, get gender affirming care or whatever. And then it's just like, no, now they're literally just banning it in states.
Yeah.
It's like a prisonable offense.
It's actually
like, it's super fucked.
It's shocking that there were things that were actually like ever positive for any marginalized individual in this country. Like there was. It's weird that something like Roe v. Wade actually passed in the 70s.
Yeah.
When there's been like an oppositional like force the literal entire time. But yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, and now it's gonna go down as a huge black mark in the history of the world.
Yeah.
The overturning of that's a huge, like, that's not a win for anybody. That's
No.
Except for like fascists.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh, okay. Let's not go down that tunnel.
Let's try to.
Sorry.
I mean, it's,
I have this thing where I kind of ruin the mood. So I should maybe apologize, but also sorry, not sorry.
Oh no, like we're strong believers in like being like, well, here's the thing you got to fight for now, but yeah.
Well, it's relevant to the record that we're talking about because there was so much of the conversation around this band when they were when they first formed and when they were really kind of blowing up was like, hey, these are things you need to think about. And these are things that you need to fight. And like, there was definitely a, like, your buzz kills, you're too PC, you're no fun, whatever, like attitude. And it was like, they're really fun, but they also stand for something. So I don't know what your problem is.
Well, it was a lot of like, what do you mean I can't mosh? What do you mean if I can't hit women? What do you mean if I like use these horrific slurs? Like, it's just like, no, like, we're actively trying to do better.
Yeah.
Like they, I've seen RVIVR a bunch of times and like they would always have like pamphlets and like little zines and things that were just like about really important issues or like things that were applicable to like certain communities that maybe you weren't well versed in. And then you would go to the show and you would see the message like live and then you would be like, oh, the zine is really cool. Can I pick this up? And then you would like learn something. And so it was like, it's like punk rock. to quote Adam in his package, it's like the punk rock academy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go and you learn some shit, and then you take it away and you try to do better. And yeah, that record is just like, it seems like there's an overarching theme in it to me that's like very much about like life and death and mortality and like the human condition. Like the idea that like everybody is a person, even the worst person is still like a flawed individual. Like there's like a really human element to that record. Like, and as you were saying, like I remember when it was just like RVIVR's that band, but like they were also one of those bands that was like women and queers to the front, like take care of each other, be safe, like all of those things. And like that just resonated so hard with me, and I've like carried that through pretty much every project I've been a part of since that was introduced to me. I was like, yeah, I don't want anybody feeling uncomfortable. I don't want anybody like dealing with like misogynistic bullshit. Like I want people to come and have fun and be able to like rock it with their friends. And like maybe there's a message that you can push through with that. But like you want punk rock to be like a safe environment. People like really, especially like old punks, focus on like the danger of how punk used to be. And like, I don't know, it's way more cool to feel safe in a place than it is to feel afraid for your life.
Yeah.
Like,
I actually just went to a show last week. I went and saw Pup, and
nice.
I brought, it was actually, I took our younger brother. He is 19 years old, and it was his like Christmas present to go see Pup. And there was a ton of crowd surfing, like a lot of crowd surfing. And I was there and I was like, man, RVIVR needs to come back and tell everybody to steal crowd surfers' shoes, because I can't handle people like falling on top of me at shows anymore.
You need the Joyce Manor RVIVR co-headlining tour. Just call it like the no head walking tour.
Yeah.
Just like people get hurt when you walk
Right.
on them. Like, yeah, I don't want to get like, people have crowd surfed into me and kicked me in the head.
Yeah.
And it's just like, then you just deal with like a concussion for the next 4 years.
Right. Like I wear glasses and like, and I have plantar fasciitis. Like I don't really want to be crushed by a 6'3" dude, which I saw some of that. It's just like, all right,
I think that's just like a rule of life. I don't want to get crushed by a 6'3" dude. Yeah. I think if you like can adhere to that as a life value, you're doing okay.
Like, we're not in a swimming pool. We're not playing chicken. It's just, I don't want you on top of me. I just don't.
Yeah.
I've never liked it.
I barely want to be surrounded by this many people. Right. It took me so much energy to leave the house. It took me so much energy to convince myself not to like just give into the anxiety attack that I have going on. Like, the last thing I want is to just be like, and there's somebody moshing and then they broke my glasses, or like they, you get hit in the face, or like something happens. It's just like, it's just shitty.
Yeah, like
that's
I don't
like
want somebody's full body weight on my
with,
neck.
No, and like Cluttered we're playing with Propaganda, and I don't really know what kind of crowd. Like I know that Propaganda stands for like all the right things, but like is the crowd that's going to come out like the same kind of crowd that were like, I listened to punk in high school and then like never grew from that, and now they're all like bullies and cops? Like, is it going to be that? And am I going to have to be like, stop hurting each other, like stopping the set, like to be like respect each other's space, like especially in like the pandemic times that we live in? Like, it's just, I've been thinking about this for weeks, just being like, okay, what kind of situation am I going to end up in? And then like through the process of getting ready for this podcast and listening to this record a bunch, I was just like, no, my bandmates got my back. Like, we're fine to like whatever I spout off, they're going to be like, Matty's got a point. So it'll be like, it'll be okay.
Well, and you're playing with somebody like Propaganda too, who like, they're on the right side of history, They're not a band that like just
completely
shut up about politics after, they got famous. So, yeah, you're in a good crowd there. So hopefully the audience is cool, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, fingers crossed, right?
Yeah, right.
I read back over things that I wrote 3 years
run through some little stats on the band and the record. So, this is Reviver's LP. They are from Olympia, Washington. They formed in 2008. This was released April 2010 on Rumbletown and Yo-Yo Records. This is their debut full-length album. The personnel on this album is Matty Jo Canino on guitar and vocals, Erica Freyas on guitar and vocals, Kevin Rainsbury on drums, and Nell Talos on bass. And the record was recorded and mixed by Phil Douglas, who was Matty's bandmate in Latterman and also plays guitar in Iron Chic. So Reviver was formed in the kind of the aftermath of Latterman, and Matty kind of thought that, hey, nobody understands what these Latterman songs are actually about, and people just want to mosh and not really care about, what we're singing. And because I remember even reading like posts online where people were like, what are Latterman songs about? Like Community? And it was like, well, kind of, but that's like not all of what the message was.
No. And like post Latterman, pre Reviver, there were a couple bands that they had kind of in the in-between. Erica and Matty had a band that the name is escaping me right now.
Hooky.
But they just Hooky,
yeah.
Thank you. Which was really cool. And then like Matty did Shorebirds with Chris from Jawbreaker, and like, you could kind of see like it was just like Matty was like still doing stuff, and like post Latterman was just like, I still want to do this. And then like Reviver is a very like actualized version of that. Is like, like this is what we want to say, this is how we want to say it, this is the thing we want to do, and then you just like, and then they all did it.
Yeah, there was a conscious effort by them to be like, we in all interviews and all like from the stage, like we want to make it very obvious what these songs are about, because like you can read the lyrics, and because there's like an artfulness to the way the lyrics are written, like you can miss the point, like especially if you're a very literal person and you don't quite catch what the metaphor some of the songs are. So they wanted to make sure be like, no, we're just going to tell you what it is, what we're singing about.
Oh yeah, completely. It's just like, this is the thing. This is what we're, there's like a lot of metaphor in those songs. And like I read an interview, and in it, Erica mentioned it was real mean on this record. And it was like talking about the viewpoint of that song and what it was actually about, and like trying to have like a evolving conversation about it, because like sometimes shitty dudes would just be like, yeah, this is about the girl that broke my heart. And it's like, that's not what the song is about at all. Like not even in the same planet. You're taking this completely literally. You're not paying attention to nuance. You're not actually listening to the words. Like, I think that's kind of the people who were critical of Reviver were always people who like just weren't paying attention.
Yeah, and even including like other bands in like the supposed same scene. Like I distinctly remember like Ryan from Off With Their Heads like being super critical of Reviver, like talking about how they're always just like telling us what to do, and that's not punk. And it's like, Ryan, I think you're missing the point. And I bet even now he probably would say, oh yeah, I missed the point of that, because I feel like hopefully he's grown since then.
I mean, Ryan from like listening, I listened to Anxious and Angry, and like I loved Off With Their Heads, and like I think From the Bottom's a great record, but like, that person seems like they've had a lot of things happen and a lot of growth, and like there's been a lot of like public things that have happened to that band. And if you're not growing after having those experiences or learning those things, then you're just like, you're not doing it right. Like you're not paying attention. It's funny because like for Off Of Their Heads, like the thing that kind of put them on the map was Hospitals, and you're like, that's a great album, but literally it's like, it's so self-destructive. Like, it's not like, it's very reflective, but it's very, very self-destructive, and just like, like Die Today. That's kind of like, you don't have to say anything more than that. Like that's enough. But then like with the Reviver stuff, it's a little more like, as you said, like artful in the lyrics, and like it's not as literal, and you have to like, read into it a little bit, and like you know, listen to like what's actually going on. Because like the cool thing I find with this record is like the way that the album flows is very much like the opening track, like Rain Down, is very. I think Rain Down is the opening track and Change on Me is the last track.
That sounds right.
But the first line of Rain Down is Rain Down Some Change on Me, and then the last song is Change on Me. So like there's like a linear, like a throughfare on that album, and it's just like, you know, it touches different topics as it goes, but like there's a linearity to it that's really cool.
Yeah, you'd almost call it like a concept album, the way it's kind of structured in some places, you know?
Yeah, completely. But then they kind of did a concept record, like with the Beauty Between. Like that's almost a concept record, like.
Yeah, which shows like their creativity and their, I used artfulness earlier, like that kind of made them like really stand out, I think, amongst a lot of other bands in the same like sound, because it became the generic term to be like, oh yeah, Latterman punk, like that was like the thing that everybody was calling like the post, you know, RVIVR, Iron Chic wave of bands that sounded just like them, you know,
bands like Sister Kisser and
stuff,
stuff.
Sprainerd, and like
I love Sprainerd, like unadulteratedly love that band, and it makes so much sense that they're like in that wheelhouse where it's just like, oh yeah, really heartfelt lyrics with cool guitar parts, and like it's just heart on sleeve, like it's the thing that endears me to music. Yeah,
and if you've ever like listened to like Pat Graham talk, lead singer Sprainerd, and now one of the members of Big Nothing, super, you know, heart on sleeve person, like just seems like a really sweet person.
Completely.
So, and they were
there was a great tweet that came out after the South by Southwest thing where it was talking basically about like why bands should starve for their art. Like that's, you know, that's obviously like paraphrasing. But Pat said, I think it was from the Big Nothing account, was like, I used to be in a band that had to sleep in the van all the time, and we stopped being a band because that sucks. And it was just like, oh, that, like, yeah, like nail on the fucking head.
Yeah. And that whole thing always, I'm just like, oh yeah, and it's about this band called Wednesday, who are from Asheville, who are like an hour away from me. And it was just very weird to be like, this band is sparking a Twitter discussion. That is very odd.
That's strange. So you're in North Carolina?
Yep, that's where I'm at.
Nice.
And Dylan is
I'm in LA.
Dylan's in Hollywood.
I am in Hollywood.
Fancy.
It's not. If you've ever been to Hollywood.
I haven't.
It's fun in a way. It's fun if you like trashiness. Which I do to an extent.
So what you're saying is you're gonna like cheese grater your Guns N' Roses tattoo? Is that what you're saying? You're like, I'm done with the trash?
It's that vibe for sure.
Usually like the very first thing I ask, which we've been talking for a long time, so it's clearly not the first thing I'm doing now, but the first thing I usually like to ask our guest is, what made you choose this album specifically to talk about?
I chose this album specifically because it seems like folks in the scene know that RVIVR were an important band, and but maybe they don't get their due enough, like for the impact that they've had, like even on me personally, like I can't be the only person that has been affected hugely positively by a band like that, or like by an ideology that they like helped me form. Like when I was going through the list of things, I was like, you know, what am I going to pick? And it was like, I love Against Me. And like, I've said it multiple times about like Laura's importance on like my life and my transness and like all of that stuff. But like, does the world need me to talk about that? Or does it make more sense for me to talk about something that maybe not everybody has listened to, or maybe something that like more people can discover or whatever? Also, it just gave me an excuse to listen to this record like 45 times, and I just really enjoyed that. It was just like, yeah, I'll pick a record that I can listen to ad nauseum, like over and over and over again, because I still get stoked on it. Like I still get ideas from it. Texturally, there's cool stuff on the record. There's like cool like lyric ideas, or the way that things are phrased, or like, you know, certain drum parts to accent certain things, or like guitar ideas. Like it's just a lot to pick through. Like it's a really beautiful record.
I was thinking while listening to it, like, I think this is a record that maybe has been overshadowed by not like media circus, but like just the way that so much of RVIVR was just like people talking about RVIVR and like the things that they say, or like the no moshing and things like that. And it being like this record, listening to it and going, this is a really good record with, like you said, like a through line. I mean, I guess like not to say that it's conceptual in the way that their next record was, but it is thematic and has such a consistency throughout, and it has such like obvious direction. Like each song goes into the next one with intention. Like we're going somewhere every step of the way, and like being really conscious of that, and that really comes across in listening to it, and it's really impressive. And it's something that I think maybe got filed in my brain in a way that I didn't realize, because I listened to this record a ton, but I think a lot of stuff, like along with a lot of stuff from this time period, it kind of just fell on the back burner and slipped into the background. But like this record is just great. Like it's cool guitar parts and great melodies.
Like front to back, just like, and then like a song like Grandma, which is just like so heart-wrenching. Like you're just like, oh, serve my heart up on a platter. Like there it is. You know, there's just like, it's all jams. Like the record is just very, very good. And as you were saying, like, you know, the songs are done with intention. Like the transitions are very intentional. Like it feels that way. Like, what if it all turned out that it wasn't? But I don't think that would be the case. Like they seem like a very thoughtful, intentional band of like cool individuals.
And it's not executed in a way that's like, you know, studio perfect and like really slick. It's raw and urgent, and it feels like they were saying, this is the idea of the song and these are the melodies that we're shooting for, and we're not gonna hit our marks perfectly, you know, by whatever musical like classical pedagogy standard of like timing and pitch, but it's still effective and you want to sing along to it.
Yeah. Like, and it's super anthemic, and like maybe not in a way that like bands that are traditionally anthemic are. Like, you know, it's not like there's always the big repeating chorus or the big repeating refrain. Like but it's like an anthemic record. Like it makes you want to just like put your fist in the air.
Yeah, re-listening to it too myself, I was just like, and this is the part where I raised my finger in the air and like to chant along with it to the, you know, the lyric. I was like, whenever you're listening to like an album at home or in your car and you're like getting that, like, I have to physically move to like feel this music properly, you know, it shows like how powerful an album can be, and not just in the live setting where like now's the sing-along part. But
This is point punk.
Yeah.
It's the point. I love the point.
There's
not enough of that.
I always described Future Girls, like my old band, as a bummer punk, and I think that maybe Cluttered needs to be a point punk band.
I remember seeing that for the first time. It was like a buddy who did it too, and I was just like, "Oh, that's the move. That's the right move for this song exactly."
Yeah.
Point.
It's
Just like point.
it's not horns. It's
Right.
not fist pump. It's not that era of everyone doing the like holding an orb that you're like peering into.
Yeah.
Metal thing.
No, it's
Emphatic.
you're making a point.
Yeah.
You're making a point.
I was thinking back too of like when I first like this record, listening to it like was like a time capsule for me. Like it literally put me in the year 2010, and like I was trying to think of like how I found them first. I think I had one of the 7-inches before the LP came out, and it was one of those, oh sweet, it's the new post Latterman band. So that was like the gateway for me to get into them.
Yeah.
And then Iron Sheik was coming out at the same time, like same year, like just like a month or two apart. The records came out, which is beautiful,
And, like,
that they both came out.
If you listen, completely. And if you listen to those two records together, you see kind of like the many facets of Latterman.
Yeah,
Like when I was doing some research, it was just like, the RVIVR record is the direct continuation on of Latterman, and it's just like, no, like kind of all of the bands, like even Bridge and Tunnel to an extent, like, they're all the different facets of that, like of that other band, and they're just drawing on like different things and like trying to make different points, but like all from the same scene, all hopefully believed in the same things, and we're just like let's put this out there, let's go, like.
yeah. And the crazy thing about like this coming out, like this came out around the same time, so like I think I saw Iron Sheik on the tour for that record, and I even saw RVIVR on the tour for this record. So we heard, I was specifically trying to remember the situation going into like seeing them for the first time, and I remember we'd heard that there was going to be a RVIVR show in Asheville, and maybe from their blog, which I think I actually found the blog too. It was a WordPress, and it had like all the tour dates for the show, and they were playing Asheville May 14th. And so I remember we must have seen that, and we're like, all right, we don't know the address, so let's just go to Asheville and try and find it. It's like one of those Ask a Punk type shows.
Yeah.
And I actually found this is funny, I found my Tumblr post about going to the show. And so basically in it I said we got to Asheville around 6:30. We had some time to kill, so we went and hung out with some friends. We wound up trying to get something to eat around 7:30. We tried to track down some people who had an idea where the show was. Nobody had any idea, because it was like nobody had been to a show at that house before. We were walking around and found a flyer for it, and it said it was going to start at 7 sharp, and it was 9 o'clock by the time we saw it. So we were like, shit. Okay, so we decided to drive up and down the road, because they had the road but not the actual address, and we were just trying to like find a group of people. And so it says we drove for an hour and couldn't find it anywhere. We were about to give up, and we just tried one random street, and we found like a shit ton of cars parked there, and we just kind of wandered around like near it, and we heard that the band's got a late start, and we only missed the first 2 songs. And so we saw most of RVIVR's set, and then I picked up a copy of the LP that night too. I had completely forgotten about that. Like,
I mean, I'm not a person who likes punk time.
Right.
I think punk time is really frustrating, but sometimes it pans out, and sometimes it takes you an hour of searching in a strange city to find a venue, and sometimes you get to see most of RVIVR's set, and it works out. So that's really sweet.
Yeah, I had completely forgotten about the part where like we saw a flyer, and that's how we figured out what general area it was supposed to be in. So that was a little bit of a trip down memory lane for me. When
Yeah, totally.
Did you ever see RVIVR live?
I did. I saw RVIVR play. I've seen RVIVR 3 times. I saw them play in Toronto with a band called Poor Form. This was well after like Bicker and Breathe came out. And it was great. It was just like the set ruled. Before they went into Seethen, they did a tease of doing Gonna Find You by Operation Ivy. Like Matty just starts singing Gonna Find You, like the son, you got it, like that whole part, and then just like they break into season, and it was awesome. I saw them play at Fest one year when Weekend Dads played Fest, and I saw them the last time they played Poozza Fest in Montreal, and that was actually the first time I actually got to like meet Matty and like talk to her a little bit, and that was really cool. And I was just like, it's just like one of those things where I was like, this person is never going to remember me. And then like 2 days later, she saw me passing an alley and was like, hey, Matty, how's it going? And I was like, it must just be because we have like very, different spellings, but very like similar names. They're the same name, just different spellings or whatever. But like that kind of shit, like, because I'm terrible with names, like that stuff means so much to me, because it's like, I'm like, it's so hard to remember names. It's so hard to remember names. And then like, somebody remembered my name? Like it was sweet. But every time I've seen them has just been like an ethereal experience. Like whether they're playing new songs or old songs, like the sets are always very like conscious and well put together. And like I'll go down like YouTube rabbit holes and just watch live RVIVR sets because it just feels good for me.
Dylan, have you've seen RVIVR, right?
Yeah. I don't know why I didn't go to that house show that you went to, but
yeah, I don't know. You would have been.
I did see them.
Too.
Well, maybe not. May 14th. It might. Well, maybe it was. Yeah, like finals or something.
Yeah.
But I did see them in Asheville at the auditorium. It was like at an actual venue, but before they had moved the stage, and it was before they changed the name.
Yeah.
And then I've seen them at Fest like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many.
Yeah, I was trying to remember how many times I've seen them at Fest. Probably 3 or 4 times. My favorite Fest set they did though was they did like a midnight set at Wayward Council, which was like a
nice.
And like Caves played too. So and I think Lou may even played bass on that RVIVR set.
Did double duty. Yeah.
And then
that's
that other Asheville show. That's also the show where Erica literally stopped playing in the middle of a song to like kick some dude out of the venue. Basically, like I don't know. We never really knew what he was doing, but like they were in the middle of a song. She stops, charges the guy, like pushes him out the door, comes back, and they pick up right where they left off in the song. That's perfect. Like if I was ever in a position that I had to do that, I would like, if I could do it with that much, just like hardline, like you got to take care of shit. Like if and then to come back and finish the song instead of just being like, guess that song's done. Like that's really cool. It was during Derailer because I found it was like a set, what is that site? Setlist.fm. Like somebody had the set list, and in it, it says Erica stops to kick someone out, and then they resume song.
Funny that someone.
That's really funny.
That.
It's funny that it was Derailer of all songs.
Right. It was like 3 songs into the set too. I wish I could remember what the guy was doing, but definitely it was just like
I remember him pouring a beer on someone.
Oh.
And there was I think that he was like trying to be like bro mosh whatever, like just clueless, not knowing what this band's deal was, and then someone probably getting mad at him and telling him to stop, and then I do remember him pouring I know who he poured the beer on. Someone who deserves to have beer poured on them. I can say that much, but yeah.
It's funny how like scenes are obviously like different, and they're made up of like all of the different individuals involved, but there's just this like common through fare of your like shitty person.
Yeah.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer person. Like
this shitty person ran away to another city, and then
that's the huge red flag. If somebody is like in punk and they jump between cities repeatedly, you're like, oh, why do you always have underage girlfriends? Like it's fucking creepy as hell.
Yeah,
definitely the same lane.
Canada has had a few,
right? And like with a band like RVIVR too, it's like the way they talked about stuff and the way they brought things up. It was during a time period where like there was a lot more of that excusing of that kind of like behavior. It's just
completely.
Like, oh, but he's a cool guy. It's like yeah, but he's
always been nice to me.
Right.
It was the good dudes backed hard era
Oh yeah.
of like, oh, he's a good dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I back him.
And it's so funny too that
Yeah.
like it takes a band like RVIVR. It takes like an individual like Lauren Measure like talking from the stage about things to like actually get some change to kind of happen within the scene.
Completely. I mean, like the Measure and Warriors, like again, a huge band for me. Like I remember the first time I heard songs about people and fruit and shit, and I was just like, they're saying something.
Yeah.
Like just being like there's a message here, like there's something. And then I think it was like the Measure played Insub Fest in Baltimore, or they played a festival, and they were like, we're not marking up our records, you can come talk to us in the van and we'll just sell you records out of the van.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like that also like builds interpersonal connections and like encourages people to be like actively involved in the scene and like talk. And then you can like, for every person who can be like kind of punishing, you meet somebody that's cool, and then like you branch it off from there, and that's really rad.
Yeah, those punishers. They're well intentioned, but ooh, sometimes it's a little rough.
It's interesting because like I mean we've all probably been that person at different points. Like you meet somebody who you're like really stoked to meet, and then you're just like motor mouthing the whole time. But like you know, there's a fine line between somebody who's got like really good intentions and is just like nervous, and somebody who's just like doing it for clout, or like doing it because they think you're cool, and getting to know you will give them some social cred or something. And like that's just like a weird thing. I have no time or space for that.
Yeah, I've definitely been that person where I was just like, must remain conscious of how much I'm talking versus listening, you know?
Yeah. Because like it's a fine line too, because you're like, I don't want to appear totally shy because I'm like kind of shy, but like yeah.
I'm definitely typically a quieter person on, you know, like more in group settings, the quieter person, but yeah. And I host a podcast. Very weird. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah,
but
it's weird. We talk to total strangers on the internet all the time, but I can't talk to people that I work with every day.
Introverted extrovert.
Yeah, it's the I have to make the conscious effort to be nice. Like, and I've had a coworker who was like, I thought maybe you didn't like me, and I'm like, no, I really do like you. I'm just like, when I work, I'm like, work.
Yeah.
And
you're not there to like, you have your community and you have your pals, and you're not really there to like make friends. You're there to be friendly, and that's fine. But like, I've had that, like, especially like working like bad office jobs and stuff, and they're just like, you're nice, but you're so unapproachable. And it's just like, yeah, I've got like resting bitch face. Like you're just fucking a little bit of like flat affect, and then it's just like, oh, you're pissed at me, and it's like, I'm not pissed at you. Like I could be, like, you'll probably say some dumb shit and I'll be like all over it, but for the most part, I just want to be left alone so I can work and then stop working.
yeah, let's just get this day over with so I can go home and not work. Let's see. Are there any... So looking at the actual record itself, what are some standout moments for you?
Let me pull up the track listing just so I can go through it. Because there's a bunch. I mean, like, the big one for me lately has been the song Animal Hands. That song's dope. I mean, like, lyrically, it's just like, what do you give? How much do you take? Can you admit you made a mistake when consequence comes calling? Just like me, you sleep or you shit and sleep. A coward and a king, a human being. You're not even a villain. You're just a man, an animal with hands. I'll take control. I'll let you go. No matter where you were born, no matter what you earn, you just like everyone, you're dying. Like, that song's like so human. It's just like, no matter how different of a person you are, or like how separate you are from someone else, we're all like victims of this like human condition where we're just kind of like hurtling towards oblivion all the time and trying to make the best of it. It's just that some people are like more exploitive of it, I guess. So that song's sick. Cut the Cord is great. Rain Down, I mean, like, is a great opener. I really like Change on Me. The instrumental song on it's cool too. Like, I just really like this record. Like, I could go through every song and pick out a reason why I like every song, but like, you know, Animal Hands is like a strong fucking song on this record for sure.
That was a track specifically when I was like re-listening to it last night too. I was like, yeah, I look at this track listings or the song titles as I'm like making my notes on them. And I got to that one, and then that one just really stood out to me as being like, maybe you'd probably call it a deep cut on the record.
Oh yeah, it's like if not the first song on the B-side, it's like the second song on the B-side. Like, it's like a deep cut.
Because, you think about the record, you think about Rain Down into Edge of Living, you know, with the old friend line.
Yeah.
Real Mean was kind of like not a single, but it's
like
the one that like stood out amongst the, like, probably like a first listen through, that's the one that stands out.
Well, it does Real Mean, Cut the Cord, and then Grandma, and you're like those are all like three kind of perfect songs, and then you're just like, they all accomplish something a little bit different, but like they are, like, the melodies in them and like the lyrical content and everything is just like so good, and it's just like bam bam bam, and it happens, and then by the time it's done you're like, I'm kind of tired, and then they like pull it down a little bit and then like bring it back up, and that's kind of like the linearity thing where you're just like, you know, you can make the best record you can, but like sometimes you need like a little bit of a breather, or sometimes you need like a moment to pull it back before you push forward again. Like it's just really good. Great.
Cut the Cord, I think, is my single favorite song from the record. I think it's always kind of been the standout song for me. And sequencing definitely has a big part of it, because it does come after Real Mean. You kind of get set up for it. It is a really nice 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
I think that's the highlight. And the rest of the record, I feel like it flows so well that it very much feels like one big song in a really effective way. Not in a, this one song has been going on for too long way. It's just a nice big movement. It feels, and for lack of a better way to say it, it feels kind of epic. You know, as you had said, like it's like kind of one piece of music at the end, and like you had made Dylan, you made a really good point with, like, you know, Real Mean, Cut the Cord, and Grandma all kind of being like the three sandwiched together. It's like bam, bam, bam. So like it's just a really well constructed record. Like, even listening to it now, like this many years later, it's like, oh, I can still go back to this. Like it's something that like holds weight, and maybe somebody will like discover this record because of this podcast, and they'll listen to it and they'll be really stoked on it, and then they'll just be like another nerd about this band.
Yeah, Dylan, you mentioned earlier too how like it kind of like went on the back burner and then like kind of just fell off of your listening. And I think the same thing happened to me too, because it was one of those records that like I listened to it a lot when it was new. I listened to the next LP when it was new. Like everything they put out, I remember listening to a lot when they were new. And then over time, I guess partly because they stopped being super active and releasing a ton of music. So it kind of, I guess it's that thing of like, if they're not constantly refreshing you with new stuff, you'll forget to go back to the older stuff. And so like revisiting it for this, it was a long time since I'd heard it. And I was like, this is just like a punk masterpiece. Like, and like, we just kind of were like, I think as a punk society, a culture, we kind of just let it go and forget how good it was.
Would you describe it as a punkasso?
It is a little abstract if you look at the artwork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Though I guess that's supposed to be rain, which fits. Yeah.
It's a lot. Revisiting this, it is a lot like revisiting Latterman records, which I've kind of done the same thing of being like, I listened to those records so much, so consistently that it was like, I don't need to listen to it all the time. But then when I come back to it, I'm like, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like deep in my Latterman phase, 10 plus years on, like, just like, oh, what can I do with the guitar to make it sound like Phil Douglas? Like,
yeah. Which I've heard people complain about like Iron Chic records to be like, it just sounds like the same song over and over again. It's like, yeah, but what a song. Like, also,
like, usually people who are saying that are like not paying enough attention.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Like you can write, these are the same people who love like the Ramones. Like the Ramones rewrote the same song over and over and over and over again. I love the Ramones, but it's definitely a like. There's only so many ways to make a sandwich, right? Like you're just like, what can I do with this?
Yeah, yeah, and I think the people would say that about Iron Chic because it's that Phil Douglas tone.
Yeah,
and that's purely what it is because they're structured so differently, and that and the vocals have he has a very like specific way of singing, but yeah, I hate that kind of complaint. No, it sounds like the same song. I don't know.
Oh yeah, the song isn't different enough. It needs a weird part, and you're like, not every song needs a weird part.
Yeah.
Sometimes songs are just rad because they're songs. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you stopped enjoying a band because they did something too different, where you were just like, I don't know, I think I'm done with this band.
Yeah.
They went in a direction I don't like.
or like, they go in a direction you don't like, you fall off, and then rediscover it years later, and you're like, oh, I understand where they went with that, but it takes you a long time to process it, to like get to that point. Like I had that with Direct Hit. I think the album's called Crown of Nothing. It's sick, but it took me a really long time to get into it. Like it doesn't sound like the rest of the Direct Hit material. So it was just like, okay, this is different. And then I was like, oh, it's different. I get it. Like,
oh yeah. Yeah. There's definitely this part where you're just like, the artist was ready for a change before the audience was.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because they're the ones playing the songs and writing them and coming up with the ideas and hearing them over and over and over again. Yeah.
Playing them over and over and over again.
Yeah. That's like an underrated aspect of like when a band makes a drastic shift. It's like, well, how many times did they play that song?
Oh yeah. You're like, you went on tour for 6 months. Like you've played that song every night for 6 months. You probably never want to put E, A, and D together ever again.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as listeners, we should be a little bit more forgiving of people taking chances.
And also just be like open to it. Open to like where they're coming from or what it might be, or like, you don't know somebody's headspace. Like maybe they're just like, we're just trying something. It's like I'd heard a quote once, and like I'll be totally hypocritical in this moment, and it was a quote from Weezer, and it was like their guitar player was like, I don't really feel like good about this record. And it's like, well, we'll just fix it on the next one. Like there's always another one you can make.
Yeah.
Like you can create this thing and it's like kind of a stamp in time. That being said, I haven't listened to a Weezer record I've enjoyed since like 2006. So like, but
yeah,
it's just one of those things. Like you're like, okay, it didn't totally work. We'll just do another thing. Yeah. We'll just build on it. Like go from there.
Yeah, because it's not. I mean, I guess some bands it can be like, well, that one didn't work, so we just stopped being a band. Like, well, there were probably other factors leading into that. The reason why they decided to end it then, but yeah,
exactly.
Well, I think I have come to the end of my notes on this record. Do you have any closing thoughts on the album?
I can't sing the praises of this album enough. Like, it found me at the right time. It means a lot to me now. It means as much to me, maybe more now than it did then. Like, it's just kind of important. And like, again, there is so much music out there and there's so much to discover and so much to go back on. But like, sometimes the thing that you're like, okay, this thing came out 12 years ago or whatever, and it still rips and it still resonates and it covers so much ground. And then you're like, oh, maybe someday I could make a record that's as cool as that.
That's like, yeah. I think even when it came out, there was like a part of the people talking about it were like, it's just a great record from front to back. Like there was this like, it's just a singularly good piece of music that I don't think a ton of albums get. Really, you don't really get that like automatic everybody agrees it's perfect records very often, but this was one of those.
Hey.
I think that'll do it for us today then. So Maddie, thank you so much for doing the show. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was great.
Yeah. and please tell everyone where we can get a hold of all your music and all that good stuff.
For sure. Cluttered.bandcamp.com, futuregirls.bandcamp.com. You can find us on Instagram or Twitter at clutteredband. You can find me personally on Instagram at Matty Disgrace. My last name is Grace. Disgrace. It's very punny. And yeah, just like reach out. We're just people making music. Yeah. Like I'm very online.
Well, cool. I'll make sure to include links to all that stuff in the show notes. And yeah, thank you so much for doing the show again. This was great. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. As long as this was sick. Thanks for having me, and like hopefully I didn't just circle on the same like 4 points over and over and over again.
Nah. That's a podcast.
It's a podcast.